It's encouragement time from the Church Encourager podcast. I'm Douglas Laws. With me is my father, Pastor Steve Laws. We are pastors at the Keys Vineyard Church, conveniently located in Big Pine Key, Florida. This podcast is a great opportunity for the two of us to talk about our sermons at Keys Vineyard. We actually provide a discussion guide for each message that's on our website and our app. And this is where we kind of go through some of the discussion questions from that guide. And, the hope for us starting this was that this would be helpful to everyone in our church and really to everybody to kind of just think these things through as part of their devotional time. So, typically what we'll do is we'll just go through some of the questions. So, Dad, I'm going to fire away. In the sermon, you mentioned that our minds are often the last thing to be renewed when we come to Christ. What old thought patterns do you find yourself still struggling with that don't align with God's truth about who He is or who you are? What are you comfortable sharing on the spot on a podcast?
I would say in general, it generally has to do with putting myself at the center of the story. And that as I'm going through life, some of my first thoughts are how this impacts me, right? And I always joke about it when I catch myself is, do you know who I think I am? And there's a lot. I would say I feel like I catch it more than I don't, but I would love for it not to be the first sort of thing. Like, boom, so it just sort of points out to me how often I'm at the center of the story, and that, that's where that renewal of my mind is continually taking place. And I don't know about everybody. I think it's normal. I mean, sometimes it's hard to know what's normal because you don't know what's inside everybody else. Maybe nobody else ever has that issue, but I think a lot of times it's, going to the grocery store. How did I pick the longest line again? Or,
Yeah.
Or why didn't this happen? Or, we driving. I tease about that all the time. It's very easily to get poked in those ways. And where I live, it's very busy right now, last week and this week, because of lobster season. And I feel myself getting frustrated. It's really,
why are there so many people on my road?
And nothing's a big deal. It's just,
right.
It's all center of the story stuff. So it just means my mind hasn't caught up as well as it should yet. And it's very easy to get distracted on things that don't really matter, right? In the bigger picture, it just doesn't matter, but you spend a lot of time there. So I think those are the things. And as far as I can tell you, it takes a lifetime because, I've been doing this for 40 years, walking with the Lord. Because I came to the Lord when I was 25, and I'm aware of how much work there is to be done yet. So I'm guessing for me anyway, it's going to take, every day I got to get there.
Well, it's funny how many things kind of pop up when something mildly inconvenient. Just for a specific story, it's Saturday, we were busy here. My wife and I, we just got back from our trip Friday. It was Friday at 2 a.m. And, we slept Friday and, after a trip, you're just kind of like that. And then Saturday, we had a memorial service and, I was trying to figure out meals for the week. Speaking of grocery shopping, this is why I thought of it. I was like, okay, hon, I want to think of meals. What do we need from the store? And she had just put two things on the list that she knew of, rice and butter. And I was like, well, we need a full meal plan. I don't think we have. So, I come up with a whole list. I was like, can you please just write this down? And, my hope was she'd write it down and then look for the ingredients. I didn't communicate that necessarily. My fault there. So I went shopping, got everything that I thought we need, got all this stuff. And she mentions how frustrating it is when we have too much bread. She's like, why did you buy more bread? We didn't need more bread. And, I was like, do you want to go? There's so many thoughts. Like, I went to the store. I was trying to think of a meal plan. I thought you would have done this. I was making all these assumptions. And then, the voices were elevating, not like a nasty fight or anything, but just like, why weren't you doing it? And then I'm like, why am I yelling? Why am I getting upset? It's like, And the funny thing at the end of the story is I forgot the two things she had asked for, rice and butter. So, like, so at that point I was like, I really can't say anything. But we both stopped. We both apologized
Yeah.
because she didn't read my mind and I didn't really have the patient response I should have. So it's but there's pride issues in there. There's just like why didn't you do this, the unmet expectations thing that we put on people. That's one of the things I think I need to work on is and I get that from you, I think, though. Don't you know who I think I am, sort of deal. But that was just one specific story I could think of recently that happened, and I still haven't gotten the rice and butter, but I did find butter in the freezer, so now we just need rice. And I can't eat white rice, so it doesn't really matter for me.
See, that's that thinking that needs to be
There's some
changed.
old thought pattern coming right through. So we're all works in progress.
It's very that whole thing. One of the things about relationship is that it really does quickly point out our selfishness, which is something that all needs to be renewed, right? And there's really nothing quite like relationships. Not only the husband and wife relationship, but even in friends, our selfishness becomes very apparent. And will we sort of realize it's not all about us and be, aware? And there's a lot of factors to that too. I think we want to, we can get tired and busy and all those things. Anyway, so there's a lot of work to be done.
Lots of work relationally. But fortunately, God is good. Here's another good question. How has your understanding of God's love changed over time? Has it become more intellectual knowledge or experiential reality? You were mentioning how you were saved at 25, and I think a few weeks ago you mentioned your testimony. So like, what's it been like for you all these many decades, as you're much more seasoned than I am? How has your view of God's love changed?
I'm his love is so amazing. And I've been aware of that for a very long time, but it's also it's just this amazing gift that he loves us. And again, I can't speak for everyone. I think we have a tendency to drift into being very performance oriented, where we start trying to perform. And then the thing that goes along with that is when we're performing, you talked about expectation with people, we start putting expectations on God. And when he doesn't sort of seem to meet our perceived expectations of what he ought to do because of what I'm doing, that's where we get in trouble. And the love of God is so much greater than that. That was the point of the sermon. Like, it's like, if you got to pray every day, that his actual, he empowers us to begin to grasp how deep and high and wide, is the love of Christ. And that when we experience that, is I think when we're at the best point of being able to settle and not be so much in the center of the story and stop striving and start really trying to experience more of the life that we're called to. So, I would just say that after all this time, I'm just aware of how I'm becoming more and more aware of how expansive the love is, if that would be a term that describes that it's so much more than we can imagine how deep his love is. And so that changes and I would think it changes both, in a knowledge, as you press into the word and begin to see his love displayed in all that he's done, and just in the intricacy of the word of God is fascinating. But also in the experiential thing, that even though I mess up often, he still loves me, not looking for loopholes to mess up, but he loves me, right? And so I don't want to take that for granted, but I get it.
Yeah. Well, when the question phrases it, has it become more intellectual knowledge or experiential reality? I feel like the more we pursue knowing him, the more we experience him too. Not that they're mutually exclusive, but just kind of digging in and studying, you'll see God move more frequently. So, it's funny. A lot of it just comes down to, when we talk about performance thing, is just being willing to be wherever God needs you to be. That grocery trip Saturday, mentioning it twice, but I'm trying to check out, And there's a woman who's been in our community for a while. She's just struggling. She's working there. She's one of the, she's doing the bagging stuff, and she's like in the middle of my check-in thing, so I can't quite go to the cashier. I've got the groceries loaded up, and she's just start weeping. And she's like, my grandson got into some huge trouble. Do you guys do any prison ministry? And I'm like, we minister to anybody, So I, kind of just hugged her, gave her, my phone number, be like, hey, I'd be happy to talk to him. Just give me a call right then and there in the store. And somebody behind me was so moved by it. He like ended up talking to me in the parking lot. We had a good conversation. But just when we're where we need to be, and when we're just sensitive to other people, and we're willing to be used by God no matter what, things happen around us. And who knows the chain reactions that something that simple might have on the the guy who commented, and the woman there. And obviously we can pray for those situations, but just being kind, just hugging her. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but if you need anything, give me a call. Like, I can't get your grandson out of trouble, but I can tell him to stop doing what got him in trouble.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's good. The sermon you're preaching this coming weekend, people need turning. It has a lot to do with having our eyes open in situations like that, and how when we're paying attention, we'll be amazed at how often we see God at work, and we could just as easily not pay attention. So that in the coming week, I know we don't normally do what's coming, but in the message ahead, it's really about living intentionally, purposefully, and being aware of what's happening around you. And so I think, the takeaway from the coming weekend will be looking for the supernatural in the natural. So anyway, that's just a sort of a something to get people excited about what's coming.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. You had challenged everyone at the end of the sermon to pray Paul's prayer from Ephesians chapter 3 over themselves daily for a week. What specific area of your life do you hope will be transformed by a deeper understanding of God's love?
Yeah, I think I was bringing it up in the other questions. Just I would hope that he would continue to, as I settle more and more of his love, would continually get myself out of the center of the story, so that it wouldn't be my first. I would love for the time when that's not the first thing, right? I have to wait, and that my thinking is so changed over time as I settle in his love, that it's the other things that should, the second and third thing become the first and second thing, right? And the thing where I'm stuck moves it down the list some.
Yeah. All right, we'll do one more question. How might your response to discouragement change if you truly believed and experienced the depth of God's love for you? So again, you sort of mentioned a lot of these, but we'll just, I like going through the discussion questions.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you can do is, when you're feeling discouraged, is if you can get yourself to go, oh, well, what's going on? You can start working your way through it. And I think we've often talked about it. A lot of times what's discouraging us is not as big a deal as we make it. And when we can really settle in the fact that God is bigger than what we're going through and able to do things that we can't even imagine, that we can kind of rest him. I think the issue becomes, when we're in a situation, we generally have a thought about how to get out of it or how it gets better. But and then God's ways aren't usually like that. And so we sort of, in our thinking, somehow we're limiting God, instead of saying, God, this is horrible or whatever, but I know you got it, you got me, and whatever on the journey out, I just want to rest in you and not try and make it go the way I want it to go. I want it to go the way you want it to go. And, help me settle in your love so that I can just get in that. Because when we can get in that, it's getting into his will, right? That's when life is at its very best. But this not like that just is always where we are. We're often
very hard in the moment to,
we're trying to get him most of the time to do what we think, instead of find out what he thinks and do that.
Right. But that's why it's so important when things aren't, up against the wall, when things are just quote unquote normal, that we're still diving in and pursuing him. And the more we can do that in the, the good times, the easier it will be to go that way in the hard times. God is, like you said, God is so much bigger than our problems. And, but so often we'll hit something, be like, how could this happen? It's hopeless. And that's why, again, it's so important to just understand how big God's love is for us. Its width, its length, its height, its depth. And, as we face discouragement, to just be encouraged. So that was very encouraging, Dad. Thank you for this time. It's always a blast getting to do these. I'll be up next weekend with part 15. Really looking forward to that. But hey, again, thank you all for listening. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, bye.